Hi everybody, my name's Bob Saunders and I've been asked to make a video on why we humans are all here on this crazy planet Earth, okay? And I'd like to explain why, but I warn you now, it's quite a complicated story, so it's going to take me a few minutes, so I ask you to be patient. I'll do my best to explain it as I've had it explained to me, and I hope it will make sense at the end of it all. Now, I'm going to say first of all that a number of alien beings have said that they are responsible for human life here on Earth. Now, my spiritual guides have told me a completely different story, and that we're actually made by archangelic beings, and I'll explain this as we go along. Now, the most important thing to remember to start with is that we are actually invisible spiritual entities that inhabit a body. This body is just a form of advanced robot, if you like. When we die, this body ceases to function, but our spirit carries on indefinitely. I will just say at this point that some people that have had out-of-body experiences or lucid dreams have noticed when their attention is in one of their auras that their physical body is paralyzed and that it frightens them. I will just say that if anybody has one of these experiences, don't worry about your body being paralyzed. It's just quite simply that your attention has gone off into an aura, and so your body ceases to function. Your vital functions keep going, breathing, heartbeat and all the rest of it, but you can't actually move and you feel paralyzed. And a lot of people, it frightens them, and quite understandably, I do understand that, but it's a perfectly normal function of your attention no longer being inside your body. Okay, but the important point to remember is that we're actually spiritual beings inhabiting a physical body. Okay, now I'd like to change and go on to something else. I talk about energy. Now, there's a number of different forms of energy. We talk about solar energy, we talk about electricity, fossil fuel energy, nuclear energy, and on and on. But in fact, there is only one form of energy, and that is a spiritual power that can either be raised or lowered according to the will of archangels, or indeed our will. We may not realize it, but we're doing it all the time as well. And that creates, or what's the opposite of creates? Destroys, if you like, energy. Okay? So there's only one form of energy, and it's actually a spiritual power. All the fossil fuels, all the nuclear things are actually just different aspects of that one spiritual energy. Okay? I've got some notes, so if I keep looking down, please excuse me, because it's complicated and I need to get the basics sorted out, otherwise it won't make much sense. Now, all the different planets everywhere in the galaxy and beyond are actually made in this fashion. If it's decided by the archangelic beings that are actually very close to what we would call God, they work for God, directly under this God force. If they decide that they need to create a planet, for example, they take a piece of life force and they imbue that life force with a logos, a stamp that tells it that it's going to be a planet. Okay, now at this point it's just an invisible life force. Now these archangelic beings then make this life force, by the way they put a coating called a soul around it as well, but we're talking about planets, not what we would call living things, but planets. They take this life force, put a soul around it, and then they bring it down through the different realms. In other words, they're reducing the energy of this that will surround this life force, and as it does so, it draws matter towards it out of what we call dark energy, it draws this matter more and more in a more and more visible sense, if you like, until in the end a planet is formed, complete with all its earth and stones and rocks and mountains and seas and all the rest of it, and if it's meant to have seas, and that is how a planet is made. Now, in the case of a blade of grass or a raindrop or an animal, it's, well, indeed even a human being, it's basically the same idea. The archangelic beings take a piece of life force, put a stamp on it, a logos that's going to tell it that it's going to be a raindrop or a human being or a microbe or an animal, whatever. And they gradually bring it down, and round that logos is formed the creature that we see. Okay, that as it comes down, it draws denser and denser matter towards it until finally, if it lands on planet Earth, it will appear as an animal, a raindrop, or whatever, a human being, whatever. Okay, but inside each one of these items is nevertheless the Spirit of God. In other words, a planet is alive, a raindrop is alive, a blade of grass is alive, an animal and us is all alive. We're all the same thing. Okay? Now, the next thing I want to talk about, I'm going to keep on with this energy concept a little bit, is that there's a constant battle going on between raising and lowering energy. Each planet is supposed to raise energy. Now, I'll start again. If each planet, in order to make each planet, as you can imagine, taking that basic life force and this stamp, this logos, and bringing it down and down and down, requires a vast amount of energy. Now, once something is made, it is hoped that that something will start to raise energy back up into the spiritual realms in order to repay the energy that's been used to create it in the first place. Okay? So there's this balance going on between energy being poured down, which incidentally, just taking the planet Earth, is being constantly done. If the archangels didn't constantly pour energy down to keep manipulating plants and animals and things, they would gradually die out. So they need, as the planet Earth naturally changes very slightly all the time, they need to have energy, they need to change the DNAs very slightly of animals and indeed humans and plants and things to keep the whole thing going. So that's energy being constantly poured in. And they rather hope that stones and plants and animals are going to raise energy back up in order to keep the whole thing going. Okay? Now, which is not an easy thing to do. Now, let's talk about planet Earth. Planet Earth was actually created for animals. We were never meant to come here in the first place. We humans actually were designed either to stay in heaven and do our thing there, or to go off to other more advanced planets throughout the solar system to do something there. But it was noticed that the planet Earth tried to raise energy, because the planet Earth is just as alive as you and I, tries to raise energy, but stones and things like that, water hasn't got a great spiritual capacity to raise energy. Animals were put here, and it was hoped that these animals would evolve to the point where they could start to raise energy of their own to repay the energy that was and is being poured into the planet Earth to keep the whole system going. But as you may have noticed, it never really happened. I know cats and dogs and other creatures can be very affectionate, but you could hardly call them spiritual beings in the sense of consciously raising energy back up. So a decision was made many millions and millions of years ago to send human beings from heaven, which was where we were meant to be, down here to see if we could evolve and start to raise energy and redress the situation, pour energy back up to replace the deficit of spiritual power that had been used to create all this in the first place. So, believe it or not, volunteers were asked for, and those volunteers include you and I. We must be crazy, but we did volunteer, and over long periods of time we've all come down here and tried to do our best to raise energy, or not. Now, I'll quickly, I'm just, right, now, the very first lot of human beings that were created by the archangels were actually, they had very gelatinous bodies. If you can imagine more like a fish or a jellyfish, they had bodies a bit like that. Now, I don't know if in the long ago historical documents, if any exist, there's any mention of that, but this is what I've been told, that they were very gelatinous sort of creatures and really couldn't survive on Earth. They might well have survived in water, but they couldn't survive on dry Earth, or terra firma. And so that experiment failed. So the archangelic beings scratched their heads and came up with a more solid form, rather like we've got today. And gradually, over millions of years, they've altered the DNA structure of human beings until we've got to the point of us, right? So this is where it's a bit bizarre, because aliens tell much the same story. I can only tell you what I've been told, and you believe one or the other. So we are here. Now, what our function is, excuse me, I need to, right. What our function is quite simply to raise energy, spiritual energy. Now, I'm going to change the subject a little bit more and talk about how we are made. Now, we've got our physical body. We've also got a spirit of God that's associated with us. It's not actually within our body, but it's associated with us. And most people, when they're born here, their spirit of, there's a kind of a, there's no pathway, should I say, between your physical body and your mind and all the rest of it and this spirit of God. So most people, even if they believe in religions and so on, even if they say they believe in God, they have not actually made that connection between who they are and their spirit of God. And it's our function down here, quite simply, to make that path to our spirit of God. And the way we do that is through prayer, meditation, and being a nice, kind person. Then that path is made, and our spirit of God can then make a really strong connection with us, and then we can start to think about, through being a nice person and through praying and through praying for peace and generosity and helping other people and so on, and through meditation, we can push energy back up through the different dimensions, back up into the highest spheres, to replace the energy that was used to create the whole thing in the first place. So that is why we are here. We're here to quite simply replace spiritual energy. Energy has been poured down to us and has been from the very beginning, and we need to pour it back up again. And the only way to do that is through prayer, meditation, and being a nice person. Or I'm sure there must be other ways, but you understand what I'm saying. We need to be basically nice people. Now, there is one slight other aspect to it, which I'm sure you've all noticed, that there are other factions here that we call basically the devil, that are trying to do the opposite. For some reason that I have difficulty fathoming, they want to stop us raising energy, and they want to make the deficit of good energy coming down versus nothing going back, to make it as great as possible. And so they influence, these devilish beings influence certain people to create wars, all the banking disasters that go on, people being thrown out in the streets. They create viruses that kill people. They use this HAARP system to create catastrophe. Now, the idea being that they want to make us all as unhappy as possible, so we just live in a cloud of misery and don't send energy back up, because the more energy that goes back up to the spiritual realms, the less their power operates. It's a kind of a seesaw. If we can go up, they go down. If we go down, they go up. It's as kind of as simple as that. But really, this is what I wanted to say, that our function here is to raise energy. Why we're so in such a catastrophe is because we don't do it enough. We need more and more people just to quietly and gently meditate, pray, and to help their fellow man as best they can. And then all these horrible wars and things will gradually reduce in power. Now, we're not alone in this battle. There are many angelic beings that constantly pray and send us positive thoughts if we can only open ourselves to them. I understand, I can't verify this, but I understand that there are certain, I don't like to use the word alien, but certain races that come from other planets that are also working to bring peace to Earth and encouraging us to be positive spiritual beings that we really are. And there's a number of factions like this. Plus, I will also say that with effect from, I think it was November or December 2012, there was a planetary alignment that is pouring energy, positive energy, into the planet Earth. Okay, this is really all I wanted to say. I'll just quickly recapitulate. We're spiritual beings that should have stayed in heaven and on other advanced planets somewhere. We were sent down here. We volunteered to come down here to try and help redress the deficit, the situation of deficit of spiritual energy of the planet Earth that is not being sent up enough to replace what was sent down to use it, to create it. And it is our function to encourage as many people as we can to be good people and to consciously send energy out, positive energy out, which is God's energy, and replaces the energy that was used to create the thing in the first place. Okay? That's all I wanted to say. So thank you very much for listening to me. I'm sorry if it was a bit long and also a bit complicated. I hope you understand it. If you've got any questions, please contact me. I will be delighted to help you if I possibly can. And I'll say goodbye. Thank you.